Welcome back to my Football as a Pie series. And if you are new here, just so you know, this is the 6th video to the series. So I am creating a football pie of how I assess my football teams, how I assess them this year when I was making all of the videos that I was making in regards to them. So that is what you're here to see. This is the 6th episode. So that means there are 5 other episodes that come before this episode. So if you're watching this episode and this is the first episode that popped up for you, I want to encourage you, put this in the save to watch later and go back and watch episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this episode will make sense. For reference, we are talking about patterns. And so we have a P for perspective, we have an A for advantages, we have T for tendencies, and we have another T for talent. And now we're at the E, which are the equalizers. So this video is about all the equalizers in football. And so yes, as I've mentioned before, if you have not watched all the other videos, this video might be a little confusing to you because I will refer back to those other videos. But if you have been ready for this video, and if this is the video that you know that you are here for, let me get into the video and let me talk about all things equalizers so that you can understand what I'm even talking about and how it makes sense in regards to assessing football teams and how it fits perfectly on my pie. Let me get to the other side of this video. What is so crazy about this hair is I don't know if it's coming or going. I don't know if it's curled or frizzy, but let's hope it looks good on camera. But anyways, that was so random. Equalizers of football. So one thing I know for a fact in football is you cannot beat yourself. The second you beat yourself is the second we have a problem. However, I'm calling this section equalizers because these are the things that can happen in the football game that nobody knows that they're coming. You look at a game plan, you say, the one thing you can't do in this game is have this happen, or the one thing you can't do in this game is have this happen, because if this happens, chances are we're going to lose. So without further ado, let me talk about my equalizers. The first one is going to be, no surprise, turnovers. Turnovers are the greatest equalizers in football because you don't call for them, you don't know when they're coming, and it derails everything you have going, and it helps the other team get the momentum. And so when I say turnovers, I mean if you get a turnover, it can equalize you and have a better chance of you winning the game. But if you turn the ball over, that can also impact your ability to win a football game, because if you turn the ball over, it limits your abilities to get points and it limits the amount of possessions that you have. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is turnovers. The greatest equalizer in football is a turnover. A turnover can change a game. A turnover can null and void talent. A turnover can null and void field position. A turnover can null and void all the things that I've talked about in previous videos, because a turnover basically turns the game upside down. And so the first equalizer in football is a turnover. So you will find sometimes when I create videos, I will say, the only way my team is going to be able to lose to this team is if we turn the ball over. And what that usually means is my team is more talented. We have the better athletes. We have the better game plan. We're playing at home. We have all these different advantages. But once we start turning the ball over, there's all those advantages go away and everything becomes an equalizer, because that is what turnovers do. On the flip side of this, if you get turnovers, that should help your team win. It is very hard pressed for you to go find a game where a team won the turnover margin and still lost the football game. I do want to say this. Usually if your team wins the turnover margin and loses the game, it means you're not a very good football team, Pittsburgh Steelers. We often sometimes have won the turnover battle and we've lost the football game. And that's when I kind of started to realize, like, we're not a good football team. Or if you know from some of my Colorado videos this year, I was saying this team is going to have to get turnovers to win. The reason why I knew that is because their offense would always be stalled. And if you have a stalled offense and you can't move the ball, you need something that's going to jolt you and help you kind of get back into rhythm. A turnover can do that. The other thing with Colorado is their defense gave up a ton of yards. And when you give up a ton of yards, eventually someone's going to score. But if you're giving up a ton of yards, by the time you get to the 20, the 30, or the 10 and you fumble, then you're giving me the ball back. So all of those yards don't matter. And now I have the momentum. So the greatest equalizer in football, in my opinion, is a turnover. The second equalizer that you can't really quantify until it happens and until you see the impact. All I know for sure is it's probably going to be an impact is anything special teams, good or bad. So the good could be if your special teams returns a kickoff for a touchdown, returns a punt for a touchdown, if your special teams gets a fumble. If you do all of those things on the plus for you, it's usually a great thing for your team. However, on the flip side of that, if you're on the team that gives up the touchdown, or if you can't make a field goal, or if you are the team that gets your field goal blocked, it's going to impact you because it's impacting your ability to score points. In order to win football games, you have to score points. If a team is limiting your ability to score points, it is an equalizer. So if it happens for you on the positive side where it positively impacts your team, check for you. But if it happens on the other side where it negatively impacts the team, it is a negative for you. So just to call out, turnovers, very important, and anything special teams happen. That's why I like that they're called special teams, because when your special teams are special, you do great things. When your special teams are not special, chances are you might lose the football game. And so special teams is a very important aspect of winning football games. I don't think we pay enough attention to special teams, but it's a very important aspect in winning football games, in my opinion. The third thing I'm going to mention, and it honestly pisses me off that I even have to say this, but it is what it is, it's going to be the refs. Are the refs going to call the game fairly? Are they going to be consistent? Now, we never know. We go into it hoping the refs are going to call things consistently. We go into it hoping the refs are going to do what they're supposed to do. But if the refs are letting a team hold, or if the refs are letting somebody false start, or if the refs are giving another team a lot of penalties in a lot of situations, that is an equalizer. If you get off the field on third down and then the refs call a penalty and it's a phantom call, then guess what? You have to come back on the field. There's nothing you can do about that. So the refs sometimes create these games and make them equalizers because they get too involved, in my opinion. I have a whole nother video about the refs, but when I'm assessing my teams, here are the couple of things that I can never call. I never really know what the refs are going to do. Therefore, it is an equalizer. Just like I never know if my team's going to get turnovers or give turnovers, and I never know if we're going to do good on special teams or bad on special teams. All of these three things are equalizers because we just don't know, and they equalize a football game depending on what happens. The other thing I will say that is an equalizer is coaching. Sometimes these coaches drop the ball. What do I mean by this? I go into football games expecting coaches to know what the hell is going on. I go into football games expecting coaches to know how to manage the clock. I go into football games expecting coaches to see that if your team is dominating at the line of scrimmage and your team is running the ball down somebody's throat, I expect coaches not to go away from the thing. However, sometimes coaches equalize their own teams. Sometimes coaches are working against their teams because they're not doing things that make sense. And so if you're a coach and you equalize your team, you are going to decrease your chances to win because you're not coaching to your strengths. You're not running the ball. You're not holding on to the ball. You're not calling the right plays. The play calling is off. So coaches can sometimes be their own equalizers. We've seen it a multitude of times where teams have lost games because their coaching did terrible with clock management. The one thing that popped up to me immediately is the way the Steelers managed the Cleveland Brown game. Yes, that game still triggers me, but that's one of the examples. Another example I can say is the way that Baylor handled the Hail Mary against Colorado. Bad coaching. Bad coaching allowed Colorado to complete that Hail Mary. Those are just two examples that I can think of off the top of my head that stand out to me. Also, Steve Sarkisian against Arizona State. Not running the football, not running out the clock. Those are coaching decisions that are bad, that we expect coaches to have it all figured out, but they don't. And so sometimes they equalize their own team. The other thing I'll say here is the moment. You have the pressure of the moment. The pressure of the moment sometimes can equalize people. Sometimes they're not ready for the pressure. Sometimes the moment gets too big for them. Sometimes they're just not ready to perform. And when that pressure gets to you and that pressure can equalize your talents and equalize your skills, there's a problem. I'm going to say this and it's going to hurt my heart to say this, but Lamar Jackson, you can say whatever you want to say about Lamar Jackson, but he had 2 turnovers in his playoff game that eliminated his team from the playoffs. Do I think the Ravens lost all because of Lamar? Well, no. I think some of that was coaching and some of it was on Lamar. Lamar, the pressure, you could say the pressure got to him. I know it sounds terrible. I'm a Lamar fan. I want Lamar to win the Super Bowl. However, if you keep folding in the playoffs and you keep turning the ball over in the playoffs, I only can assume that that is pressure. I can only assume that when the moment happened, you equalized yourself because you succumbed to the pressure of the moment and you fumbled the football. So that's painful for me to say, but it kind of is what it is at this point. It happened, so I have to call it out. One thing about all of these equalizers is when you are the less talented team, these are the things you have to hope happen in order for you to be able to win a game. Because if you're not as good, if you're not as big, if you're not as strong, if you're not as this, if you're not as that, the second you get a turnover, or the second you block a field goal, or the second you get a special teams touchdown, or the second you do any of these things, you are able to equalize, neutralize, or whatever the team that you're playing against, and that gives you an advantage. To me, when I'm watching my team play, one of the most frustrating things about watching my teams play is when these things happen that go negatively against me. Obviously, I love to get a turnover. I love to get a blocked field goal. I love a punt return for a touchdown, but I don't like when those things happen against my team. So just something to consider here. All of these equalizers makes it very hard for you to understand or how to figure out with your team. If you go look at any stats from a game, you could have a team that has more rushing yards, more this, better quarterback efficiency, better on third down, better on this, better on this, better on this, and they could still lose the game because the equalizers, because they allowed a special teams touchdown, because they have 4 turnovers, because they have 2 turnovers, because they got a blocked field goal. They moved the ball 99 yards, could not punch it in the end zone. They had to kick a field goal. They missed the field goal. You still have those yards. You still have the time of possession, but you don't have the points. So when you look at the stats, I always say, look at the equalizers. Look at the way that you're winning the game. Don't just look at the highlights of what you can see. Go look at the actual data. Go look at the information from the game. Look at the yards, look at all the stuff, and then always look at the equalizers. Always, always, always look at the equalizers. Were there turnovers in the equalizers? Was there a special teams touchdown? Did somebody block a field goal? Go look at the play-by-play, see what happened. If you were up, if you were up by 17 points and you got the ball back and you saw in the play-by-play that it was just pass, 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 and then they punted the ball. So again, these are all the equalizers where you can actually see what happened in a football game. For me, I've said this many times, I think sometimes when we look at football, we're only looking at the things that stand out to us. We're only looking at the highlights. We're only looking at if we won. We're only looking at certain things. Me, I'm going deep. I'm going to look at the details. The devil is always in the details. I want to know, are we turning the ball over? What does this look like? What is our coaching play calls? And you will notice in my videos, those are the things I always complain about in my reactions. My complaints and my reactions are these equalizers that I just called out because they continuously popped up for my teams all year, and that is why I needed to add them to this pie. So just to let you know, you could do every single thing right on a football field. You can make all the right reads, you can do all the right things, you can do all the things, but the second you turn the ball over, the second a special teams touchdown happens, or the second you miss a field goal, or the second the coach forgets that he's coaching football and goes off the rails and does something that doesn't make sense, or if the refs do something and it's a bad call and you can't reverse that call, these are all the things that can derail your team and cause your team to lose football games or win football games if those things happen that help you. The one thing I'll say before I end this section of the video is good teams always have multiple ways to win. This is not the first time I've said this. It probably won't be the last time I've said this. If you are a team that has multiple ways to win because you're that much more talented or because your coaching is that much better or whatever the thing is, the second you have one of these equalizer things happen, it kind of goes down. So let's say you have multiple ways to win a game. Let's say you have 6 different ways that you can win a game because you're that talented, and another team only has 4 ways that they can win a game. So you have 6 ways to win a game. This other team has 4 ways to win the game. But you turn the ball over. That 6 is now at 5. So you now have 5 ways to win a game, and they now have 4 ways to win a game. Now let's say the refs have a terrible call. Now you now have 4 ways to win a football game, and now you're tied, and now you have to play it out. So again, that's a very basic example of how I'm looking at this, but these equalizers can either give you a plus or give you a minus. And so it's important for me to call that out because this is an important piece of my pie. If you F this up, it's going to show, but if you get this plus, it's also going to show as well. So I will end this section here. And so the next one we're going to talk about is the R. And the R is going to be for all the random things that I'm thinking about. It's going to be kind of similar to these equalizers, but in a way, it's going to be a little bit like the tendencies where it's going to become some kind of odds and ends things that you can kind of put together and see if your team is doing what it takes to win these games or if your team is doing what it takes to lose these games. So I will end this video here. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And as always, I will see you in my next video.